The room went silent before I even understood what my father had said. His glass was still raised. His smile was still there. Everyone at the long table stared at me like I was supposed to laugh or apologize or shrink into the chair the way I always had. Then Dad said it again, slower. "You are always our biggest regret, Lillian." My fingers tightened around the little toast card I had written that morning. 3 sentences. "Thank you for supporting me. I hope I made you proud. I love you." Across the table, my mother looked down at her plate. My brother Marcus leaned back in his chair with a half smile, like this was the real celebration he had been waiting for. Dad turned toward the guests, my relatives, his business friends, even 2 of my professors, and lifted his voice. "Some children make a family stronger," he said. "Others spend years taking and taking." I stood there in my graduation dress, still wearing the bracelet my grandmother had given me before she died, while my own father used my dinner to bury me alive. Then I saw the ring on Marcus's hand. And something in Dad's face changed when he noticed me staring at it. That was the first moment I realized this dinner was never meant to be mine. The private room at the restaurant had been decorated with silver balloons and white flowers, but none of them had my name on them. Not really. The banner behind Dad said, "Congratulations, graduate," but the table cards were all written in his handwriting. The menu had been chosen by him. The guest list had been controlled by him. Even the seat I was standing beside had been placed at the far end, away from the center, like I was an extra at my own graduation dinner. Dad tapped his glass with a knife. "Since we're all being honest tonight," he said, "I think it's time this family celebrates the child who actually understands loyalty." Marcus's smile widened. My professor, Dr. Keller, shifted in her seat. "Richard," she said carefully, "this is Lillian's evening." Dad didn't even look at her. "It was supposed to be," he said, "but Lillian chose a useless path, ignored this family's needs, and expected us to clap for it." Mom whispered, "Richard, please." He raised one hand, silencing her without turning his head. That was how it always worked. He spoke. She folded, Marcus benefited, and I swallowed whatever was left. Dad placed his hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Tonight," he announced, "we're also celebrating Marcus's engagement to Jenna and his promotion to operations director at Graves Custom Interiors." A few people clapped awkwardly. Marcus stood, soaking it in. And that was when the candlelight caught the gold signet ring on his finger. My grandmother's ring. The same ring Dad told me had been sold years ago to help pay my freshman tuition. The same ring I had cried over losing because Grandma Beatrice had promised it would stay with me. I stared at it. Marcus noticed and curled his hand into a fist. Dad's expression hardened. "What?" he said. "You have something else to complain about." The room held its breath. I set my toast card on the table. Then I stood straighter than I had ever stood in front of him and said, "Then pretend you never had a daughter. Live the rest of your lives as if I never existed." Nobody moved. Dad gave one sharp laugh, but it died before it became real. Because when I turned to leave without my coat, without the card, without another word, his face wasn't angry anymore. It was scared. I didn't make it past the parking lot before the restaurant door opened behind me. "Lillian." My mother's voice was sharp, not worried. I stopped beside a row of parked cars, the cold air pressing against my bare arms. Through the windows behind her, I could still see the table. Marcus was standing now. People were clapping again, softer than before, like they were trying to pretend nothing had happened. Mom hurried toward me, clutching her purse against her chest. "You need to come back inside," she said. I stared at her. "That's what you came out here to say." "You embarrassed him." I almost laughed, but it caught in my throat. He told an entire room I was his biggest regret. She glanced toward the windows, lowering her voice. "You know how your father gets when he feels disrespected." "When he feels disrespected," I said. "Mom, when did humiliating me become easier than loving me?" Her mouth opened, then closed. For once, she had no rehearsed answer. Then she looked away and said, Just apologize before he cancels the apartment deposit. There it was. The leash. Dad had promised to help with my first month's rent after graduation, and for months he had used that promise like a hand around my throat. Smile at Marcus's engagement party. Come help with inventory. Don't correct him in public. Don't make your mother cry. I wiped my hands down the sides of my dress. I don't need the deposit, I said. Mom blinked. What does that mean? It means I accepted a fellowship in another city. The color drained from her face. You applied without telling us. I applied because if Dad knew, he would have found a way to ruin it. Mom stepped closer. Did you use that essay? What essay? The family history one, she whispered. The one about your grandmother. I frowned. Yes, why? She looked back at the restaurant so fast it scared me. Lillian, listen to me. Do not mention your grandmother tonight. Not to your professors, not to your aunt, and especially not to your father's business friends. Before I could ask why, the door opened again. Marcus walked out, straightening his jacket, that gold ring shining on his finger like a dare. Still making the night about you, he said. I looked at his hand. Where did you get Grandma's ring? He smiled and lifted it slightly. Dad said it was mine now. That ring was sold. Marcus shrugged. That's what he told you. My stomach dropped. He leaned closer, voice low enough for only me and Mom to hear. Some children cost more than they're worth, Lillian. I stayed loyal. That means I get what's left. Mom whispered, Marcus, stop. But he was still smiling. Dad said it was mine now, he repeated, just like everything else she left behind. I didn't answer him. I turned around, walked past my mother, past Marcus, and pulled open the restaurant door. When I stepped back into the private dining room, Dad was already standing at the center of it. His hand rested on Marcus's shoulder, like he was presenting a prize. Graves Custom Interiors has always been built on loyalty, Dad said, and Marcus has proven he understands what family means. The clapping started again. This time, I didn't sit down. I walked straight toward Marcus. The applause thinned, then stopped completely as people noticed my face. Dad's smile held for half a second too long. Lillian, he said tightly, don't start. I stopped beside Marcus and pointed at his hand. Why is he wearing Grandma Beatrice's ring? Marcus's fiancée, Jenna, looked down at his finger. Dad's jaw shifted. This is not the time. No, I said. This is exactly the time. You told me that ring was sold to help pay my freshman tuition. A murmur moved down the table. Dad laughed once, sharp and fake. And this is what I mean, he said, turning to the guests. We gave everything for her education, and she still finds a way to accuse us. Dr. Keller straightened in her chair. Lillian earned significant scholarships, Richard. Dad ignored her. We drained savings, he said. Used credit, put the business under pressure. Also, she could chase a degree and stand here acting like a victim. A few relatives looked at me with that familiar expression, the one Dad had trained them to wear around me. Pity mixed with blame. Then a chair scraped at the far end of the table. Aunt Naomi stood up. She was Dad's older sister, the one he called dramatic, bitter, impossible. The one who had stopped coming to holidays after Grandma died. Her eyes were fixed on Marcus's ring. That ring was never yours to give away, she said. Dad turned slowly. Sit down, Naomi. No. The room changed with that one word. Aunt Naomi looked at me. Your grandmother made specific arrangements before she died. Richard knows exactly what I'm talking about. My pulse hit my throat. Arrangements, I asked. Dad slammed his palm lightly on the table, not hard enough to look violent, just hard enough to remind everyone he expected obedience. I said sit down. Naomi didn't move. Jenna quietly slipped the ring off Marcus's finger. Marcus grabbed for it, but she pulled her hand back and studied the engraving inside. Dad pointed at me. You want to humiliate this family, he said. Fine. From this second on, I will not support you financially. You can leave with nothing. I looked at him, then at the room full of witnesses. You just told everyone you funded my education. His eyes narrowed, because I did. Aunt Naomi's voice cut across the table. Then, why did Mom's attorney call me last month, asking why Lillian never received a single trust statement? Nobody breathed. Dad's face went pale. Then he leaned toward his sister and whispered, loud enough for the closest people to hear, Naomi, shut your mouth before you ruin everything. The silence after Dad's warning felt heavier than the words themselves. Aunt Naomi didn't sit down. I looked from her to my father, then to the ring in Jenna's hand. What trust statement? I asked. Dad reached for the check folder near his plate. This dinner is over. No, Aunt Naomi said. It's been over for years. She deserves to know why. Mom's fork slipped from her fingers and hit the plate with a small, bright sound. Dad snapped his head toward her. Elaine. She flinched. That was the moment the pieces started arranging themselves in my mind. The envelope Dad took after Grandma's funeral, Mom panicking outside, the lie about the ring, the way Dad loved telling people he had sacrificed everything for me. Aunt Naomi pulled out her phone. Your grandmother set something aside for you, she said carefully. For school, for housing. I thought Richard had been giving you the statements because he said he was handling it. Dad stood. We are leaving. Marcus pushed back his chair. Dad, what is she talking about? Nothing that concerns you, Dad said. But Marcus looked at the ring in Jenna's hand, then back at Dad. For the first time all night, he didn't look smug. Aunt Naomi forwarded me an old email with a law firm's name and number. My hands shook as I tapped the screen. Dad stepped toward me, put the phone down. I pressed call. The table watched as the line rang. A calm male voice answered, Henderson and Vale, this is Martin Vale. Aunt Naomi leaned beside me. Mr. Vale, this is Naomi Graves. I'm with Lillian Graves. There was a pause. Then the attorney said, Lillian is there. Dad's face tightened. I swallowed. Yes, I'm here. Mr. Vale's voice changed. Lillian, I'm glad you called. We've been trying to reach you. Dad said, this is a private family matter. I put the call on speaker. Dad's eyes flashed. Don't. I looked at him. You wanted witnesses. The attorney spoke carefully. I cannot discuss full details in a public setting, but I can confirm that Lillian Graves is the named beneficiary of a protected education and housing trust established by Beatrice Graves. The room seemed to tilt. Dr. Keller covered her mouth. Marcus whispered, a trust. Mr. Vale continued. Our office requested contact because there are irregularities requiring immediate review. Jenna placed the ring on the table beside my abandoned graduation program. Marcus turned to Dad. Did my promotion money come from that account? Dad didn't answer. Mom began crying silently, one hand pressed against her lips. I looked directly at my father. Did you forge my name? His nostrils flared. His voice came out low and rough. Everything I did kept this family alive. One of his business partners stood up without a word, grabbed his coat, and walked out. Then Mr. Vale said through the speaker, Lillian, there is also a letter your grandmother left for you. The next morning, I sat in a leather chair across from Martin Vale with Aunt Naomi beside me. The law office was quiet enough that I could hear the clack on the wall. Mom arrived 10 minutes late, wearing the same coat from the dinner. Her eyes were swollen. She didn't look at me when she sat down. Dad refused to come at first. Then Mr. Vale called him and said, Mr. Graves, the trust documents, bank transfers, and disputed signatures are already under review. Your absence will not stop that. 20 minutes later, Dad walked in. No speech, no raised glass, no audience he could control. Just him, a folder full of paper, and the daughter he had called his biggest regret. Mr. Vale opened the file. Beatrice Graves established the trust 6 years ago, he said. Its purpose was Lillian's tuition, housing, graduate relocation, and first-year living expenses. I stared at the page in front of me. My name was there. Lillian Graves. Not Richard Graves, not Marcus, me. Mr. Vale continued. Richard was never authorized to personally control the funds. Beatrice was very clear about that. Dad's mouth tightened. Aunt Naomi whispered, Mom knew. Mr. Vale turned one document around. After Beatrice's death, forms were submitted requesting redirected disbursements. Several signatures do not appear to match Lillian's legal signature. Some funds were routed into accounts connected to Graves' custom interiors. Marcus's promotion. The business announcements. The apartment deposit Dad dangled in front of me. All of it folded into one ugly shape. So he didn't pay for my school, I said. Mr. Vale's voice softened. No, your grandmother did. Mom started crying again. I looked at her. You knew. She shook her head too quickly. Not everything. That's not what I asked. Her hands twisted in her lap. Your father said if I questioned him, the business would collapse. He said we would lose the house. He said Marcus would have nothing. And I was acceptable damage. She covered her face. Dad leaned forward. Don't talk to your mother like that. For the first time, his voice sounded small in the room. I turned to him. You told everyone I drained you. You did drain me, he snapped. Your grandmother always favored you. She made you think you were special. Mr. Vale removed one sealed envelope from the folder. Beatrice also left this for Lillian. My fingers shook as I opened it. Grandma's handwriting filled the page. Lillian, if this letter reaches you late, it means someone stood between you and what I left behind. I am sorry for that. You were never a burden. You were never difficult to love. Your quietness is not weakness. One day they may call it betrayal when you choose yourself. Choose yourself anyway. The words blurred. But I didn't cry in front of Dad. I folded the letter carefully and placed it beside the signet ring Aunt Naomi had brought from the restaurant. Then I looked at Mr. Vale. What happens next? The answer came piece by piece. A formal claim was filed. The business accounts tied to the trust transfers were frozen during review. Dad's largest partner withdrew before the end of the week after learning company funds might be connected to trust fraud. Marcus lost the operations director title because the position had been built on money the business could no longer legally justify. Jenna postponed the engagement. She returned the ring to me in a small velvet box and said, I don't know what Marcus knew, but I know he enjoyed hurting you with it. Mom admitted she had signed one document as a witness without reading it. Maybe that was true. Maybe it was. Either way, it destroyed the last fragile excuse I had made for her. The people from the dinner heard what happened. Relatives sent messages filled with apologies they should have spoken years earlier. I answered none of them except Aunt Naomi. Dr. Keller helped me find housing near my fellowship. Mr. Vale helped recover what he could from the trust and began the legal process for the rest. Dad lost the one thing he had protected more fiercely than any of us. His image. Not in front of strangers online, not through some viral video. I didn't need that. He lost it in front of the people whose respect he had built his life around. Months later, I woke up in a small apartment in another city. Morning light crossed my desk, touching my framed diploma, Grandma's letter, and her gold signet ring. My phone buzzed. A message from Mom. Your father misses you. I stared at it for a moment. Then I deleted it. No reply, no explanation, no apology for surviving without them. For the first time in my life, I was not the family's regret. I was the proof they could no longer rewrite.